Grateful for those who chose to join us tonight. We have a special guest with us tonight who's going to lead us in a thought and a pledge of allegiance. Marilyn, thank you so much for accepting our invitation. Pleasure to have you here. I'd like to excuse Councilmember Barker. Hopefully he will be joining us shortly. He's at the fire department's this week's Truth and Taxation hearing. He's making the presentation there. So hopefully he will join us a little bit later. So we'll go ahead and get started this evening. Marilyn, if you'd like to step up and give us a thought or prayer, whatever you're going to do, and lead us to the pledge.
Did prepare some remarks, just a few. I prepared more, and then we looked at the agenda, and she said you'd be here till midnight, so I couldn't say very much. So I cut him back after that. I just love this quote from Sir Edmund Burke. He said, "Nobody makes a greater mistake than he who does nothing because he could only do a little bit." And I've loved that forever. I'm grateful for each of you whose service in our city and all the talents and abilities that you have and the influence that you are in our lives. I love to serve, and I've been involved in community things for a long time. I very first started when we lived in Richfield. I had 8 kids and 2 of them were little babies, and something happened with the PTA that I didn't agree with. And I thought, you know what, I could join and then maybe I could make a difference. So I did. And I served in PTA for 25 years there and here. And I served Weber High and the junior high, and even on the Cone people, all the Cone schools are the schools that feed into Weber. And I loved that. One of my favorite service things ever is I served 9 years as the advisor for the Youth City Council. That was the highlight of my life. I loved those young people. We had 9 different mayors. Every year we elected our new mayor, and I served with 9 of the most amazing young leaders. And we did fun stuff. We went up to Weber, or up to Utah State, and did a big conference every year in March, and went to Dale Legislature. I watched them lead and I watched them grow. And we talked a lot about civility. We read the rules that George Washington wrote, his paper on civility, and we talked about that, about being able to disagree with people and being nice about it. And I hope they learned some things. That was a good thing to do while I was serving there. In each of my volunteer things, I've learned a lot, and I hope that I put those to use in other ways and other ways that I've been able to serve. I was Richard Harris's main supporter when he worked for the city. He served for 24 years, well, 23 and a half years. He was on the planning commission, then he was a city councilman, then he was a mayor. And I've known him since we were in the 6th grade band. And I know him to be honest and true and good in all that he does. I never heard him tell a falsehood ever in my life. I've been there for all the ups and the downs and the goods and the bads, and that's been good. I loved when he served here, and it was good for us. When he didn't run again for mayor, our little granddaughter, who's now in the 8th grade, said, "How come he didn't run?" And I said, "Well, he was just tired and he needed rest." She said, "Man, I like to be in charge of everything." And you'll laugh because you know how that goes. We learned a lot of things during those years, some really great things and some really hard times, and it was good to serve during both things. And I just think that's really good. It's good to stand up and learn during hard times. I think if we manage our association with others in a courageous way and think about policies over politics and be kind and courageous always, that's a good lesson. I listen to Boyd Matheson a lot, and every day when he closes his remarks, he says, "As you go out in the world today, see something that inspires you, say something that uplifts someone, and do something that makes a difference." And I think that's a good thing for all of us to think about. If you'll stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Marilyn. Now, I've apologized to Mayor Harris privately, but I probably only in a public one. I gave him a pretty hard time when he was the mayor. So I've learned, when you walk in someone else's shoes, you learn a lot. So he served the city well, and we appreciated his service. All right, Council, you've had a chance to look at the agenda, and I would now inquire Anyone has any perceived or actual conflicts of interest they'd like to disclose regarding the items on the agenda this evening? Seeing none, so we'll go ahead and proceed. I would be looking for a motion before I do this. I remember this time, Councilmember Dow passed. So we're going to start tonight with, in any voting, with Councilmember Swanson, then we'll swing down here to Councilmember Severing and move back this way with Councilmember Ekstrom and yourself, and if Councilmember Barker shows up, we'll put him at the end of the track. So anyway, we have before us tonight the minutes of the June 13th, 2023 City Council meeting. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at those. If you have any corrections, we would entertain those now. And if there are no corrections, I would look for a motion to approve the June 13th, 2023 City Council meeting minutes. So I have a motion to approve the minutes of the June 13th, 2023 City Council meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Ekstrom. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Seeing none, the motion passes unanimously. Now we move on to item 3 on our agenda, which is a discussion or action to consider the June 27th, 2023 City Council meeting minutes. Are there any corrections? Those minutes. I don't see any, so we would need a motion now to approve those minutes.
So moved.
So moved by Councilmember Ekstrom. Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Dowd-Piles. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We're now going to hear from the infamous Dylan Hill, who is with us this evening to seek approval of the conditional acceptance of the deeds at Rockwood subdivision.
Correct. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for letting me join you guys tonight. The views at Rockwood, it's a 35 lot subdivision that started around January 2021. They have water, sewer, storm drain, and LID improvements that have all been completed. The streetlights are vertical, and a work order to get them connected to Rocky Mountain Power is in right now. So they don't light up, but they are installed and upright. So the ADA ramps up there was very, very tough because the engineering of the whole subdivision, but we have met on site with the contractor to get those with acceptable slopes. So all the improvements are up to the city code and standards, and is a recommendation to provide them conditional status and start their 1-year warranty process.
Thank you, Dylan. Thank you for paying attention to the ADA requirements up there.
That's tough.
So good stuff, but life, we do hard things in life, right? All right. Okay, any questions for Dylan? I see none. I left my 300 questions at home, so I'll get them next time for you, Dylan.
Thank you.
So I need a motion to approve the conditional acceptance then of the views at Rockwood. Do we have a motion?
Mayor, I move that we approve the conditional acceptance of the views of Rockwood.
Thank you, Councilmember Severing. We have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Swanson. Any discussion on the matter? Seeing none then, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes unanimously. As usual, Dylan, thank you for your diligence and
Thank you, guys.
making sure things are right. Appreciate it. All right, we'll now enter the item number 5, which is public comments. Just as a reminder, how that works is if you have a comment, we would ask you to step up to the podium here. We'd ask you to state your name We ask you to tell us if you're a resident of North Ogden. And please just remember, limit your comments to no longer than 5 minutes. And I think the protocol this evening will be is we'll hear public comments and give the council time to digest any comments, and we'll answer those questions at the end of the meeting. So those who'd like to make a comment, please step up.
Good evening. My name's Rob Strand, and I've lived here pretty much my whole life. I was raised on 3100 before it went all the way through, and there's a big gully there. The silver tank on the hill, I used to slam the door and go on North Ogden. I'm that old. Okay, that's enough of that. I have a little concern. I'm a hiker. And I really enjoy the Bonneville Shoreline Trail, and I really respect the landowners who allow people access to public property. And that leads me to Coldwater Canyon. It's closed. I've been hiking now my whole life. I'd like to take my grandkids up there. It's one of the most beautiful hikes around. It's a legacy of North Ogden. There's businesses that name their businesses after Coldwater, and it's closed. And I know Mr. Barker. I know Louis Barker. He's a friend of mine, and I disagree with him in closing that. He had an influx of people during COVID. They wanted to go up and see the flag. And some of them got lost and wandered through his property. It kind of made him angry. I can understand that. And I figured I'd let time pass. I hiked up there on the utility road that leads up to a trailhead. And that trail has been there 1,000 years. I know because I found an arrowhead up there. Indigenous people like that trail. And a utility road leads to that trail. So it pretty much fits all the criteria for access for public. But he closes it. And every time I see him, I say, when are you going to open up Coldwater Canyon? And he always diverts to something else like, you know, they're going to put a tramway up there. You know, I hate doing this. I wish he was here. But he's wrong. It's unlawful for him to do that. You can't deny, you know, an established trail, you cannot deny public access. And I figured I'd let some time pass, maybe it'd cool off, but I always see him, I always ask him, I disagree with him as a friend, and he's not budging on this issue. And all I can ask is, I don't have any authority. And all I can ask is maybe some authority to remind him of the law and open the canyon back up like it should be. We have a right to enjoy that canyon, a constitutional right to access public property. And what he's doing is wrong. If I could get some help on that, I'd really appreciate that. Thank you.
I'm Keith Ashtown. I'm a member, resident of North Ogden. I had them put up here this picture. There's a trail right along Pleasant View Drive, a walking path, sidewalk. The puncture weeds are getting out of hand. I have sprayed them. Could I get the city to help spray those puncture weeds? I get them in my shoes. I then take them home. I then walk around my house with my shoes off and I find them. My bicycle finds them, the kids' bicycles find them. If we could just ask the city to spray that a little bit more and try to keep those under control. That's all I had. Thanks.
I'm glad you're still alive if you're taking those things in the house. Brenda's been very merciful.
Hi, Rob. How you doing? Well, he was a perfect lead-in. My name is Bruce Hall, and I live at 2548 North, 1550 East in the Heritage Grove subdivision. Been there for 29 years. I grew up with Rob. We went to school together. I'm here tonight to express concerns about an already in process
disc golf course being implemented at the south end of the equestrian park. I'm not here to try to stop the project, but to provide input for a safe and successful deployment for the public use. This project went from conceptual presentation to the City Council on July 25th to a verbal approval to proceed on August 8th. In less than 30 days, the project is being implemented with absolutely no documented project plan. Over the past week, I've had conversations with David Espinoza and John Call. During my phone call yesterday with Mr. Call, he emphasized that this raw land is in fact a city park. We discussed my concerns about the extreme fire hazard the field grass presents and what steps can be taken to prevent a wildfire. We also discussed accessing the park only from the equestrian park and no park access and no parking signage on 1550 East in the dirt turnaround, as well as securing the west gate off Mountain Road. Mr. Call stated several times that Mr. Hunter and his club were only authorized to install T-blocks and baskets. We also discussed, what does temporary mean? What does "we'll see how this works out" mean? Mr. Call stated that all parks are temporary. But without a project plan, what criteria is used to determine when a project is successful? I continued to press Mr. Call specifically about documenting the project and who is responsible for what. Mr. Call was very non-committal about the documenting anything, including signage, and suggested several times that I was only trying to stop the project. That's not the case. The conversation left me with the perception that if it's not documented, here the city can't be held accountable. No documents, it never happened. And the residents who have no recourse to address any issues. As a city park that is adjacent to resident areas, there needs to be a project plan. What specifically are the current and future ideas and plans? On udisc.com, Mr. Hunter stated, other amenities will be added. What does that mean? It's obvious Mr. Hunter has a vision of where this project is going. As residents directly adjacent to the course would like to see what that entails. During his presentation on July 25th, Mr. Hunter volunteered that he and his group would take care of trash collection. Will Mr. Hunter provide the cans and disposal? Mr. Call verbally committed to me that the city will provide additional maintenance crews to police the area daily for trash recovery. And by the way, the canyon winds blow pretty much every night and will require regular maintenance. Again, who is responsible for what? There's no documentation. Will there be ADA compliant paths? Mr. Hunter is already promoting his disc golf course will be cart friendly. When I mentioned this to Mr. Call, he stated the course will be ADA compliant. I applaud the city for this. However, I assume the city is going to create the ADA compliant paths and address any kind of fire hazard, any type of vehicle or anything will present. At this point on this project, I don't believe the city has fully completed its due diligence by outlining expectations for both the city and Mr. Hunter. City officials can't commit or address my concerns. They don't know. They don't have a plan. I get different answers from different officials. And that was in particular about the ADA compliance. Also, what are the current and future plans for the course from Mr. Hunter? Does Mr. Hunter and his disc club fully understand
upon and agree upon all applicable city codes and ordinances related to the project. Will unleashed dogs be allowed? Mr. Hunter has been promoting the disc golf course on udisc.com as being dog friendly. What does that mean? Mr. Hunter stated that he will handle signage of the golf course itself. However, the city needs to handle infrastructure and safety signage. One way of accomplishing that is to address this is for the city to provide a signage kiosk near the restrooms identifying park rules, hours of operation, access points, maps, ADA compliance regulations, city code references, and even approve future planned events, as well as addressing the extreme fire hazard. This park is different from other parks and mountain trails. Mountain trails have been cut and groomed for passage. Without pre-planned pathways, users will wade through the extremely flammable tall grass. So the fire hazard will remain. The city needs to post extreme fire hazard signs. Most of the course is covered with 3-foot high, extremely dry and flammable field grass. Even the city won't cut the grass and the weeds after June because of the sparking lawnmower blades and the fire hazard. It's essential that no smoking, including e-cigarettes, signs be posted emphasizing the extreme fire hazard. No park access and no parking signs need to be posted at the end of 1550 East, directing traffic to the approved equestrian park.
Hey, Bruce, here's your 1 minute warning.
Thank you. Last paragraph. I'm asking the city to pause the project until fully documented project plan and documented agreement between all parties can be made to help ensure that there are clear expectations and no misunderstandings of current and future use of the park. Let's ensure this park meets high standards of accessibility, beauty, safety, family, and neighborhood friendly, just like all the other parks in North Ogden. Oh, by the way, Mr. Hunter has already named the course Coldwater Canyon DGC on his website. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce.
Chris Pulver, North Ogden, just been collecting questions from people I've been talking to. Anyway, one of many suggestions I've heard, and I don't know from an engineering standpoint if it's even feasible, is paving the canal trail. I don't know if that's something that's been talked about or thought about, but you know, the cool Pleasant View Trail is paved. Just wondering why. Maybe it's because the pipe can't take weight. Anyway, just a thought. Let's see, solicitors, I guess that's been a big thing, especially around this neighborhood just to the north. Without permit, refusing to leave, being pushy. And as I've talked to, in fact, I think I was talking to the chief the other day, just have Weaver County, you know, but I guess the one thing is that they have to have a permit and they have to have that tag. And just making sure that was still the case. And nodding heads. Okay. And then one thing that's been weird, and I haven't seen it myself, but I guess there's the appropriate name is, but people that are asking for money down at Smith's in the parking lot. And I guess there's a violin that has a very loud speaker to it. So much so that they can hear it over by the elementary school just over here. And I'm kind of surprised they can do that. But I guess the question that they had was, what's the regulations for those folks that are doing that? Is there, I would assume the noise ordinance would apply and all that type of thing, but anyway, something to think about. And then one other thing was on Fruitland Drive, and talking to Eric, and I'll probably have to talk to Scott too. There's a weird notation on the plat map that says west of road ? And that's next to Fruitland, which is another weird thing. Someone's trying to figure out whether they need to pave something or it's up to the city. So I'm figuring that out too. Anyway.
Was there anyone online that would like to comment?
No raised hands.
Anyone else here who would like to comment this evening? All right. We'll move on to item number 6 on our agenda. We have with us this evening Jamie Jones, who's our Director of Finance. We will be having a discussion to consider an ordinance adopting the final budget and tax rate in this fiscal year 2023 and 2024. So Jamie, would you like to make some comments?
Yep, thanks, Mayor. On June 13th, city held a public hearing and passed the 2023-24 tentative budget. We also held a truth and taxation hearing on August 15th. And so tonight before you, we're looking for council consideration to adopt the final budget with the property tax rate of 0.001198, which is approximately 3%. If there's any other questions or discussion.
Council, do you have any questions for Jamie? Has anything come to your mind since the truth and taxation hearing that you'd like to discuss?
Question for Jamie.
Okay, go ahead, Councilmember Ekstrom.
So Jamie, how long did it take you to get all of the figures to actually balance out?
About 1 to 2 years.
I thought it was hours, 1 or 2 hours.
1 or 2 hours.
1 or 2 hours. I just want to acknowledge all of Jamie and John's work for how complex it is to actually get a balanced budget. There are a lot of numbers and a lot of places for money to go. And we do have to submit a balanced budget to the state. And with help from the mayor, there is a structure in place for that we are covering all of our needs and costs. We're making sure that we have a rainy day fund, making sure that when things like, crazy snowfall happens and then we have $100,000 over budget in snow removal, that we have money to cover it, and we have flooding due to, all of the snow that came from it, that, the city has made plans for these contingencies. And so I just want to express my thanks to all of you number crunchers that have worked really hard on that. So that's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Ekstrom. Any other comments, Council? Councilmember Swanson.
Just piggybacking on what Councilmember Ekstrom just said, it's really been a kind of a communal effort this year, more so than I think any other time in the past. Mayor has brought his world of expertise and experience to bear on the budget. Jamie and all of her knowledge and work in the 1 to 2 hours. I've sat in meetings with Jamie that lasted longer than 2 hours as we tried to work through this. Each council member who is a liaison reaching out to their individual departments and working with those departments to make sure that needs are being met while being as frugal as absolutely possible. And then this year, for the first time, we had the Citizen Budget Committee, where we invited members of the public to come and to review in great gory detail the city budget and to, if possible, make recommendations on where changes and reductions in budget cuts could be made. And so it's been all hands on deck this year, and I'm grateful for all of the many between the citizen committee and the department heads, council members, mayor, Jamie, John, I'll bet we're in the thousands of hours that have been spent cumulatively, looking at every decimal point in the budget and doing everything that we can to keep the budget as minimal as possible. So just a hats off to everybody in the efforts that they've put forth this year.
Thank you, Councilmember Swanson. Anyone else? Before I seek a vote on ordinance number 2023-17, I would just like to commend the council for their involvement in the budgeting process. Not necessarily always in a public way, but all the hours you spent working with the department heads in preparation for this moment. And particularly like to thank all the department heads. They put in a lot of work with their teams. And I guess until you get involved in it, you don't really understand the complexity of it. And this took place primarily under John Call's direction. And I want to give him acknowledgement of his efforts also. So council, do you have any other comments or questions? What we're seeking here is a motion to approve the budget through ordinance number 2023-17. This would be adopting the final budget and tax rate for fiscal year 2023 and 2024. This would be a tax rate of 0.001198, which we anticipate would generate about $2.5 million of revenue for the city. We have a motion to approve the budget.
Mayor, I move that we approve ordinance number 2023-17, adopting the final budget with the tax rate of 0.001198 for 2023 and 2024.
Thank you, Councilmember Ekstrom. Do we have a second to that motion?
I second.
All right, Councilmember Severin has seconded the motion. Is there any further discussion or questions, council? I think you've seen the budget numerous times and gone through it in detail, but just wanted to make sure, based upon the meeting last week, that you came to your mind that it needed to be discussed this evening. All right, so we have a motion and we have a second. We will proceed then with a roll call vote. We'll start with you, Councilmember Swanson.
Yes.
Councilmember Severin.
Yes.
Councilmember Ekstrom.
Yes.
Councilmember Dowpaz.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. We'll now move on to item number 7 on our agenda this evening. This is discussion or action to consider a resolution to adjust the common boundary with Pleasant View City. This is actually Ogden City, not Pleasant View. I don't think they've gone down that far. This is actually to amend the boundary with Ogden City. City limits at approximately 1500 North Washington Boulevard, related to the Cooperstown project. John, let me just ask a question on this. Since this agenda was posted with the improper address, can we proceed?
Yes, I believe it's just your shall, because the one that's on the website says Ogden City. Yeah,
Oh, I see.
we were just trying to confuse you.
Doesn't take much, does it?
Surprise.
Okay, this is with Ogden City. I'm sorry, my show says Pleasant View. This is approximately 1500 North Washington Boulevard. Just as a reminder, I think most of you remember this. The developer wants to build a project that was, I think, probably initiated some 5 or 6 years ago and is now ready to proceed. Portion of the project lies in the boundaries of Ogden City. We have worked with Ogden City and the developer also. The agreement that we're seeking with Ogden City is in exchange for annexing that into the city, they would collect half of the property tax that we would collect. We estimate that to be about $4,700 a year. I think the developer has met with Ogden City. They required a few additional things to meet their code. I think the developers agreed in that regard. Were there any questions? John, do you have anything to add?
We do have Scott online via Zoom to answer or provide additional details if the council would like.
Scott has?
Yep.
Let's see if there's any additional details needed here from the council. Councilmember Ekstrom.
So is the division of property tax in perpetuity? They're gonna collect it forever? So we're just gonna split the property tax and so we get all the responsibility, they get half the money? No?
I think the city will have some pretty good benefit from this.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll trust you.
John, anything else?
So we did do kind of an initial analysis based on property values of similar apartments. We don't have any in the city. So we use those in Harrisville, and we estimate that about $4,800 would be transferred to Ogden City once, once the buildings are actually constructed. As an example of the value that would be transferred, and the city would end up with about $24,000. Because we would not give half of the total project, we only give half of the land that is being annexed into the city.
Okay. Makes sense.
Okay, we have with us the developer this evening. If anyone would like to hear from Rick.
You want to tell us, Rick?
Thanks, everyone. Rick Skidden, North Ogden resident on Loma View Drive, proud member of the city. As the mayor mentioned, yeah, we're nearing year 5 on this. It's been a process of a lot of give and take, and I really appreciate the city, and I appreciate the mayor's efforts on some of the direction that he helped us with Ogden City. I believe it to be, from the numbers, a project that will benefit the city. It'll be really a first-class project. We're not in there to build the cheapest buildings we can build. I think it will draw some attention. We are going to provide an area for a sign, and we're contributing to that. And welcome to North Ogden. And as far as your comment of get all the responsibility, but it led us to a problem of, okay, I get calls from the house down there that's in Ogden City about once a month, somebody's in there. And in the future, if I get that call, I'll be like, well, which site is it? Which city do I call? So we bring the utilities in, we bring everything into one. If there's a fire, I know who to call. I don't know which one not to call. So I think it brings a lot of solidarity to the project, and one the city can wrap their hands around and everybody. Any questions or comments?
Just a reminder to the council too, I think in the development agreement, it requires the portion, there is a piece of commercial
Yes,
there that has to be
in the first phase.
in the first phase along there. And we're wishing Rick luck in being able to lease that.
Yes, yeah.
Any questions? Any additional questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Scadden.
Thank you.
All right, council, this is resolution 04-2023. And this would be a resolution to adjust the common boundary with Ogden City. The city limits of approximately 1500 North Washington Boulevard. We have a motion.
Mayor, I motion that we approve resolution 04-2023, which is to adjust the common boundary between North Ogden City and Ogden City at approximately 1500 North Washington Boulevard at the Cooperstown project.
Thank you, Councilmember Valpas. We have a second from Councilmember Swanson. Any further questions or comments? See none, so we'll proceed with a roll call vote. Councilmember Swanson.
Yes.
Councilmember Severin.
Yes.
Councilmember Ekstrom.
Yes.
Councilmember Valpas.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item number 8. I believe this is going to be presented by our Public Works and Assistant City Manager, Public Works Director, Dave Espinosa, and he's going to talk to us about what you saw in your packet, a right-of-way permit proposal. So, Dave?
So the council asked us to bring back this construction of right-of-way permit. We talked about it a little bit before and kind of got bogged down a little bit on like the rocks and different things being put in the right-of-way. And the reason we wanted to bring this to you guys was more for trying to make sure that obviously we have a safe site, but that what they're doing, you know, when they're putting different things in the right of way, that we can make sure that it's not obstructing, you know, safety for, you know, fire trucks to get in or different things that we're on top of those kind of things. And the only way we feel like we can do this is by having this permit and making these guys come in and fill out a permit so that we can follow through with this. So we'll just go through this. So what this is, if you want to go to the next one, John. So it's just kind of talking about, this is, you know, we've got 92 miles of roadway, 18 feet. So that 18 and a half feet is talking about one side of the road, right? So if they're blocking with a pump truck or a, you know, a landscape company with a mulcher, any of those things, and they have it parked out in our road, you know, they're causing obstructions for viewing, for getting around it. It can be any of those kind of things. And so we just wanted to kind of show you a few of these things where, you know, some of their widths on some of their equipment can be up to the 18 feet. So they're taking up a whole lane when they're doing some of these, you know, if they have a big pump truck and they have the extensions out and those kind of things. And so we just wanted to make sure that they're kind of show you what we're talking about. You can go to the next slide. So the difference between this and an excavation permit is just that. The excavation permit is, they come in and they get a permit to do the work inside of the right of way, right? And what we're asking for this permit is just that. It's just to park your equipment or park your trailer or park your dumpsters, different things in that right of way. And so that we can monitor those things. We'll be able to do it for, again, safety reasons. But another big thing is our SWIP, right? If they have a big pump truck there right now, and say they're pumping concrete, well, if they have a leak, a hydraulic leak or even a leak on the concrete, right now, we're trying to go to the concrete company, we're trying to go to whoever pulled out the excavation permit. But if we get them, the pump truck company, to actually come out and get this right-of-way permit, we can actually go after them when they, you know, when they're the ones causing hydraulics leaks and different things and problems for our SWIP program, right? So that's another big part of it. So those are the differences. You can see common obstructions. There's just a couple of pictures here. I mean, you can see the pump truck. You can see the actual gravel that's in the road, and then the pump truck's outside of the gravel, and so there's barely any space to go around. The next one is a big one because those ones actually stay in the road quite a, you know, the pump trucks are usually in and out in less than one day, right? But the utility companies, you know, for instance, the fiber company, you know, they're parking those trailers and they're staying on the road, and they, you know, they can take up, you know, some space, and we just want to make sure we're being safer there. You can see some of the private property improvements. A lot of that's, you know, a tree trimming company. That's what this one is right here, where they're taking up, and they were right on a turn right there. So we, you know, it was a safety hazard trying to come around those guys. And they were at a blind corner there. So again, it's the biggest three things that, you know, we're seeing is for accountability for sure, is to hold the right person accountable for them putting these things into the road and doing these things. Stormwater management, obviously our SWIP stuff, like we have to follow these state regulations, and it's really hard to do it when we don't know who to hold accountable a lot of times, right? It ends up making, you know, Crystal and Dylan and their team constantly going chasing, you know, leads to try to figure out who who caused what, or who dumped, you know, a bunch of stuff in the road and, you know, we've seen, and you'll see it in this, a couple slides, but, where they've pulled out a driveway, but they left the concrete in the road until they, you know, until they clean it up. And so it's just these kind of things, just holding them accountable and making sure that we're making these contractors, be safe and do their SWIP things and be held accountable. The stormwater management, obviously, the MS4, we have to follow. That's something that we have to follow through the state. And so by having these guys put these, by doing the permit, the right of way permit, you know, we can go make sure that they understand all of our MS4 requirements. Like if they are gonna have a pump truck or something sitting out there for long-term or a dumpster, they need to go and protect our stormwater downstream because we don't want something getting thrown in the dumpster, it leaking down, you know, through the dumpster out in the road, down into our storm drains and causing problems that way. And so that's another thing. And then again, just, I've hit this a lot, but safety, you know, making sure that the traffic's flowing properly and that we are doing everything we can to keep our residents safe with the equipment out on the road. I mean, I know, you know, we've had a lot of construction lately and we're constantly building. We've got tons of subdivisions going on. And so I think there's just a ton of equipment in the road and people, I don't want to say they're getting lax because there's so much, you know, gravel on the roads and different things, but you know, we just want to make it as safe as an environment as we can for our residents, you know, with these kind of things. And we figure that the best way to do this is by going after the contractor. This isn't, you know, to go after a homeowner, because typically if you're hiring somebody to come landscape your yard or do something and they put rock in the front, that's typically the landscaper. And so we want to hold them accountable that they're making sure that they're doing it in a timely fashion and that they're getting the stuff off of the road as quickly as possible. You can go to the next one. So these are just a few things. So right now, like I said, we have the 2 permits, right? And sorry, let's make sure I got it all. So we have the excavation permit and we're bringing the right of way permit. These are just some of the things that suffice some of our own codes that we already have in place, right? Making sure that we just making sure I have the right one. Anyway, so we're making sure that this right of way permit is following all of our codes that we already have in place. So section 8, we have, you know, the right of way permit, I mean the public right of ways and properties here. The next one is, sorry, John, what's our next one? And there is a B in there, by the way, but it just didn't pertain to this, right, Crystal?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
So the B pertain to us making sure that there's efficient room for like telephone cabling and stuff like that. So it didn't necessarily pertain
Apply
to
to
the obstruction.
the obstruction stuff, so we just left that part out. The next one.
C is the damage and disruption. Is that what you mean?
No, I was just saying that there is no, like, there is a B in, sorry. So in this part of the code, in section 8 of the code, there is a B. So, but it just didn't obtain to what we were talking about, so we just left it out of the slide. So I just didn't want anybody to be confused that we're going from A to C. Sorry, guys. You can go to the next slide, John. This is just talking about, again, application for permit. We're just asking, you know, making sure that people are doing the permits that they're supposed to do. You can go to the next one. Again, MS4, making sure that they're following all of our MS4 requirements. With this, we feel like that we'll even be getting more people to follow our MS4 requirements, because right now, the only way we're catching those people is with excavation permits. So this will actually be another way to make sure that they're following all of our standards and procedures. Safety, again, making sure that they're barricading off, you know, the right of way if they are obstructing the right of way and doing those things. Then you can go to the next one. And so this goes to the fees. So the fees are or what we're proposing the fee to be. And Crystal's done a ton of work with other cities, like, they're all over the map. I mean, we have Ogden, I mean, come on, you can come up and talk about some of those, but like, really, they're all over the map. We have some cities at 250, it's just all over the map. So we're proposing $50 for the first 7 days, and then another $50 for every day after that, because we're trying to get people to get the things off the road, right? That's our biggest thing we're trying to do. And so this is why we've done this. It falls in line with a couple cities around us. Some of them are a lot higher than ours, but I think that's kind of what we're proposing. If you guys have any questions about that.
Yeah, Dave, since you opened it up for questions, that $50 a day is like way steep. Just recently having built a home and just looking around, those dumpsters, first of all, you don't want them on the driveway. $50 a day, those things are usually out there for a year.
So that was the other thing we had talked about. We actually talked about that today with Eric. So, and for the council members that were here, like, I'll be the first one to say that it feels like we're going backwards a little bit, because we asked you guys, hey, are we okay to put dumpsters onto the road, right? Because we didn't have, at the time when we asked you guys to do that 2 years ago, when we did our audit, I don't know if you guys remember, it was more than 2 years ago, but when we did our audit, one of the biggest things is that the dumpsters were in the yard, and then when they were bringing them out, they were causing SWIP problems, right? And so then we said, hey, we came to the council and said, is that something that's okay, that we can put the dumpsters into the road? Obviously, they have to follow the same SWIP protocols, but now we actually have people that are monitoring SWIP every single day, when we didn't have that a few years ago when we asked you guys. And so this is something, the dumpsters is such a small part of that, because I think we need to get the dumpsters back off the road. I mean, in the winter time, we make them, right? In the winter time, we spend, that 6 months when nobody can park on the road, they're putting the dumpsters behind the sidewalk. And so, we should be having them do that same thing during the summer, and then just following all the split permitting as far as that goes.
I would say the practicality of getting a pump truck to come in here and get a permit in advance when they're there for maybe 3 or 4 hours is like way unrealistic.
And I don't disagree, like, I really don't.
Way unrealistic.
I
Because you know who's gonna pay for this, don't you?
So,
The homeowner.
but the first day, so that's part of the fee, is that the first day is free. So all we're trying to get is just an application, and we know that it's gonna take us a
And
long
I
time.
agree knowing where the stuff is, but a pump truck's usually there more than one day. It's one day to pour the driveway, it's one day to pour the sidewalk, it's one day to.
But we're talking consecutive days, right? So I mean,
So every day they get a freebie?
Yeah.
For as many days as they come?
Let me just add real quick. So you brought up the dumpster with building a house. So this actually pertains more to kind of like the daily thing. So with your dumpster building a house, that all falls under the building permit. And so that's not necessarily something, because we can go on the permit holder, the house builder, whoever it is, to enforce the SWIP side. So this would be more like somebody who wants to clean out their house because grandma passed away. I mean, that's a bad example, but
Yeah. I didn't see that clarification in there. It just
Yeah.
talks about dumpsters.
right. And so that's my mislead as far as the picture. But we didn't have anybody doing a dumpster cleaning out a house when I was taking pictures, so.
And-
And then same kind of with a pump truck, right? In most cases, if a pump truck comes to do a driveway, it's a resident hiring a contractor. So it would be the contractor taking out the permit, not the resident homeowner. And so this really does pertain more to the bigger scale of people who should know the MS4 stuff, should know the SWIP stuff, and holding them accountable for the choices they're making in our city.
Well, and we have the contractor, last I checked, North Ogden has the second highest permits in the state. it would seem like to me, and I'm for notification and maybe where it's reasonable to get this, there's no doubt about it. But the responsible party should be the builder. And on the building permit, we got to make it very clear that they're responsible for it.
Right, and it
And
needs,
so to add an additional, say we don't have a responsible party, I'm a little bit confused. I know when we talked about this before, our key is safety. I didn't see anything in here, I may have missed it, in regards to, what do they call the orange cones, the cones there?
Yeah, barricades and all that.
You know, if they're gonna get a permit that's gonna be out there, I think they have to have
That's
inclusive,
yeah.
you know, because, did I miss that?
Yeah.
But I think we already have a responsible party. Is the developer. I think there was if they don't get a permit, I think it's pretty steep, right? $500. Did I read that in there? If they don't get a permit and they do these things, is it a $500 fine?
On an excavation permit.
it's $100 fine for working without a permit.
Okay, somewhere I saw 500. But anyway, I think we, we just gotta be careful not to overreach. We want to make sure our citizens are safe. But we sometimes think that, I know down in 1700 area, it's a disaster down there. Some of them are really taking advantage of the situation with parking their equipment there for days and things. So I agree we need to do something, but I just am concerned about a little overreach because we think the contractor's gonna pay this. The resident, I mean, whoever's
They're gonna
building the
pass it
house,
on.
yeah, they just pass it on to the resident, which is just additional money in their pocket. So anyway, my 2 cents worth. Council, do you have 2 cents worth?
I have half a cent.
Let's go with the nickel. Councilmember Swanson, go ahead.
Nickel. You're way overestimating. From what you've said, Dave and Crystal, and Mayor, from your comments, I think maybe we need to rework this a little bit so that it's clearer. It seems to me that this isn't geared towards contractors per se, where homes are being built, because like we said, they're already covered under the building permit. This would be more for, I'm gonna pull down a bunch of trees in my yard and I've got a dumpster that I'm parking out from my house. And there's some responsibility. I had a neighbor recently tear their driveway out and there was piles of concrete and taking up half of 800 for about 4 days. For sure. That wasn't marked by barriers or anything like that, and a skid loader parked out in the middle of the road. For those kinds of things, maybe come back and with some clarifying language there to make it clear what the intent of this is.
Yeah, I think it does need to be clarified, and I agree that we need notification what's going on and where it could be storm sewer problems. I fully understand that. I would like to see, you know, sometimes we do an ordinance that takes it down to the lowest level to cover everything. Somehow I'd like to identify what the abuse is, because, for instance, there's a builder that's down in the south part of the city that's had old equipment. They have the bucket from there, you know, unnecessary stuff out in the street. So I agree with Councilmember Swanson. If we could get some type of clarification here, and with the idea of keeping our citizens safe, but not overreaching and making it difficult, because I think we have to find that happy medium, because we know that the state's already saying, hey, cities, you're putting too many regulations in place, and if you keep this up, we're gonna take over zoning, we're gonna take over, because frankly, the legislature is composed of realtors, for sure, developers, and home builders.
Okay.
So,
We can do that.
Mayor? Oh, go ahead, John.
Mr. Call, would you like to say something?
So I just wanted to add a clarification. This is actually, this is allowing more opportunity for people to use the right of way. Currently, the way it's on our rule book is, it says any illegal stockpiling, which is anything in the roadway, is subject to the $500 fine. And so this is actually a program that allows for people to use the right of way as opposed to just get a ticket for doing it wrong. And so, so just as a clarification, it sounds like the council's in agreement for moving that direction. You just don't want to go to the full, nothing's allowed unless it's permitted. Basically, it's because that's already nothing's allowed, right? And so we're just trying to find a happy medium between everything's allowed and nothing's allowed. Is that correct?
I agree. I think it's important for the city to know where we could have potential problems. And I think when we discussed this some time ago, we basically, because, unfortunately, construction is crazy. I mean, when they dump that gravel to do the driveways and whatever they do, cement prep and stuff, it's pretty limited where they can put those things. So I agree that we need to be acknowledged and be aware of what's going on. But if we could focus in a little bit more and make it as narrow as possible. But I think that when we talk about responsibility, most of the abuse does take place with building. I mean, that's just how it is.
Yeah.
And the responsible party should be the contractor. And they should be aware of that when they get their building permit. But they're paying pretty hefty fees right now. Like I said, we should hold them accountable. I don't have a problem with that. So, Councilmember Dalton.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you guys for putting so much work into it, because clearly this didn't take just a moment to put together. So thanks for putting it all together and thinking it through. Would this be the same for a private individual? Like if Joe Schmo wants to do his own project and he's gonna have rocks dumped in front of his house, same expectation that he gets a permit, just as a company would, right?
Yep.
Okay.
If you're gonna do it on your own, yeah.
Okay. And then just a clarification, maybe as you guys are going back a little bit to put things down, the first 7 days, maybe just confirm, is that business days? Because I know a lot of people don't go through the weekend, so maybe just have that clarification, but those are my only thoughts. Perfect.
Go ahead.
Yes, the question that came to mind is what is going to trigger someone to know that they'll need to do it? I mean, if you have a contractor come in and they're applying for other permits, are you going to have kind of a questionnaire? Are you going to be, obstructing the roadway? In which case, then you're going to need this permission as well, and we need to, and you go through all of the stipulations. But what if, somebody just wants to do theirs and they just think, well, I'm just gonna, flip my strip and I'm gonna plop down a whole bunch of gravel in the road, and they don't know that they're supposed to have a permit.
And I mean, that's just gonna be education on our part to try to teach, like, as far as the contractor, they should know better. I mean, because of MS4 and different things that they have to follow. And with them coming in and getting other permits, you're 100% right. But
Okay.
as far as on the citizen side, it's just gonna be something that education that, we'll have to get out there. Hey,
Hopefully.
did you know you need a permit for this type of thing?
Right, and hopefully if they dump gravel in the road, they're considerate enough neighbors that they'll, get it out the road quickly, we hope. But yeah, just maybe some training on whoever is issuing permits to make sure that they go through all of the ones that are gonna be needed. So, yeah, that was it for me.
Thank you, Councilmember Ekstrom. Councilmember Swatch, you have additional comment?
Mayor, I move that we postpone this to the first regular meeting in October to give time for council to give feedback and reworking of wording and things like that.
Yes. Okay, we have a motion to postpone this item. So our first meeting in October to give some time to refine this and maybe hone in on it.
I second the postponement.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? All in favor of postponing this, please say aye.
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 Before you depart, do you have any further questions or clarification
No,
from the council?
I guess the one thing is with the fines, like, what do you feel is like too steep? Like, because, on one hand, we're being steep on purpose to get, some of these things off of the road as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
But if we're not steep enough, then we're not,
Yeah, I think in our
Things that
discussion,
don't get
correct me
dragged out.
if I'm wrong. I think Councilmember Ekstrom has a good point. I don't think people know they need this. We talked about some type of warning or a time frame to get it off the street in 2 day or a day or whatever it is. And then if they didn't act, I think that was kind of the discussion we had is obviously we're doing this as a safety issue. So it's, it's tough because you're right, Dave, people don't react.
Yeah.
Without some type of consequence. But on the other hand, I just don't know.
We'll bring a
For
couple
safety
options.
reasons or
We'll bring a couple
punishment. But I think we had this discussion about some type of warning or
Yeah.
something like that. And apparently landscapers have no clue that they can't dump stuff in the road. Because that's exactly what they do.
They do, they don't care.
Yeah.
You know, So, yeah, and feel free to contact, us for further information. I think moderation, Dave, is probably kind of how we look at things, so whatever will get people's attention without kind of taking the whack-a-mole approach. And thanks for your good work on that. I know it took a long time and thought to go into that. And, but I just think we've got to find that happy medium and not overreach, because basically this is something that's just passed on to the citizens. So, okay,
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I was thinking out.
You're so sneaky.
We'll move on to item number 9 on our agenda. And this is a discussion or action on the Lowland View Park pickleball courts. And we have with us this evening Eric Casperson, who is our engineer. And I would just say we're very confident that we can move forward with this project based upon some recent activity. We still have ways to go, but we're very confident in the direction of what's happening, that we can proceed according to our submission to RAMP for the grant we received for this. And we're grateful for those citizens who have stepped forward and helped us towards our goal. Eric?
Appreciate it, this opportunity to kind of give an update on the pickleball. I feel like before I came to North Ogden, I didn't know what pickleball was. But I've learned in the last few months how I've never played it yet. I feel like I have, since I've learned so much about it, but I need to. So this, just kind of remind everyone, we're looking to construct 4 pickleball courts at the Lowland View Park. And so this is kind of a rendering of what it would look like in the approximate location. And yeah, this was the same slide. You can keep going there. Appreciate it. So I apologize. There was some new numbers coming in the last few days since I turned this in. And so I'd like to present you with some new updated numbers. So. So one more. There we go.
Thank you.
Okay, so what we did is we submitted some bids or a request for proposal on some bids, the construction of the pickleball courts. We obviously looked for anybody that could build or has built pickleball courts and tried to convince them to build ours. And so I was able to reach out to 3 different contractors, and I received 2 responses. One was from Courts Unlimited, And they are, that's about all they do, is they build the sports equipment courts. And the other one was Crowther Construction. So the estimates that you have there in front of you, I've broken it down into a couple options. The third bid that I received an interest in bidding, but I never received the bid, even after a couple of solicitations on it. So so we just have two bids at this point. So if we start off with the Crowther's Construction. So Crowther's Construction, and if you go to, I have their bid in this package as well. So Adam Crowther with Crowther Construction has submitted a bid of $134,000, and they are only interested in doing the concrete, only the flat work. So they would do the court, the post tension, and the sidewalk surrounding the court for that price of $134,000. Then it would be the North Ogden responsibility to then provide the pickleball net and sleeves for the posts and the posts. And then the fencing, and then we would have to hire a court surfacing contractor. And currently we have Brilliant Lighting. He has ordered and he has in stock ready to go whenever we're ready, lights that will be able to light it, and he was able to give that at his cost. And then we'd have to run power to the lights, and then the grading would be our responsibility as well. So that, and so with everything that I've estimated, those numbers, I've come to 234,000 would be my estimate. This would be 235,000 would be my estimate for Crowther Construction to do the project, and then us to basically be the general contractor for the pickleball courts. The other option would be to hire Courts Unlimited, which they would come in and construct the pickleball courts completely, except for the rough grading, which we would be responsible for. They would honor the lights that we currently have and give us a $28,000 credit. And so having that taken off, and with the addition of the $11,600 that the lights would be, and then we would have to do the sidewalk, run the electrical, and then I have my grading there. I have an estimate of 241,000 for that cost. So the difference is very minimal at $6,221 between the two. So so the purpose today would be to present these options to the council and to get some feedback on maybe some direction that they would like to go. And I think at that point.
Eric, thank you. Let me ask the council what questions they may have that you hopefully could answer or did answer. So Councilmember Barker.
Time frame between the two. Yes, thank you for bringing that up. Crowther Construction can get started in about 3 weeks. He would do we would do the grading, he would do the concrete, and then it would sit until the court surfacing could be done when there's proper temperatures of 50 degrees or higher. But Courts Unlimited would not begin construction until next spring. But then they would finish it next spring.
So when you say they would start next spring, when would they be ready and available for use if they started in the spring?
So if they started in the spring, if we got good temperatures, say March or April, we could, I have to get 28 days of cure on the concrete before they can surface it. They surface it in about 2 weeks. So we're looking around June-ish.
And with the other one, they'd be ready to go in the spring then?
So we would still have to wait for the temperatures, the ambient temperatures to reach the 50 degrees that they require. One caveat that the surfacing contractors require is that it has to be level. The concrete has to be at 1% and level, no voids or thin spots or holes or any of that in it. If there were in the concrete surface, those defects, then they would charge us additional money to fix those. So where Coats Unlimited, if we were to hire them, it would be their responsibility to fix their defects.
Council member?
Just right off, I like one neck, one noose. You know what I mean? I'm assuming you are familiar with that
I'm not sure.
terminology. That means you have one contractor that is responsible for all of it. If there's defects in the contract, if there's, and so going all of these different ways, especially if, this one contractor is going to choose the time that they, are about the concrete curing and everything else. And if they think it's better to go spring, this is what they do. This is all they do. I kind of like that option better, especially where the costs are so close. And again, if we have problems in any of these, the cost can be run up because we don't have anybody else, it's like, well, it's this guy's fault or that guy's fault. So that's just my leaning.
Thank you, Councilmember Extra. Councilmember Swanson.
John, remind me, or Jamie, if you know it off the top of your head, because I don't remember off the top of my head, what's our total budget for this?
So for the pickleball portion, it's in that $250,000 range.
That's the ramp end.
And then the ramp grant also applied to the playground upgrade and the cement slope slides.
Sure.
So the total project cost is in the $500,000 range.
Okay.
I think we have that scheduled to replace the playground equipment in our capital
Correct.
projects.
Yeah.
Budget, and remind me, John, we have until July 1st next year to utilize this without seeking an extension.
Correct. We would love to have it done. That is our goal.
So one other point of clarification, so at the pickleball courts, what we have is we targeted community participation and contributions of 60,000. The city would put in 60,000, and the ramp grant for the particular courts as theoretically broken out is 120. So they're at 50% of the cost, and the city, either through donations or out of capital projects, is responsible for 50%. Is that correct?
That's correct. And then the additional 80 that's there, because they gave us the 200, would go towards the other improvements in the park.
Just specifically talking about the pickleball courts, which frankly is a pretty minimal cost. It's for something that our citizens have been requesting since pickleball became popular some 4 or 5 years ago, I guess. So, anyone else? Councilmember Dalpas?
I don't know if this is a question for John or who. I remember at some point we had heard that we were potentially getting some cement donated or something to that extent. What's the story there?
So we have two of the contractors in the area who are willing to set up meetings with their representatives at Staker Parsons, the concrete supplier they use, to look at some potential discounts or donations. And we just haven't scheduled that yet. But both of them are, buy enough concrete that they think they have some sway to get some help.
John, correct me, I think Councilmember Dell has his point is we thought we had the 60,000 basically covered by a contribution from someone who stepped up. My understanding is there was, in their mind, or there was a misunderstanding or they changed their mind.
Correct. They were going to donate labor. And so there was some confusion about the value of that labor.
Okay, and this quote here has nothing to do with that, right? This is not considering that scenario.
Correct. We've instead focused on cash donations to make up that 60 grand.
And we've also got a couple more people to meet with. And we've had some references to some other work that people might be willing to donate, such as the block wall that's actually seating there. So we're continuing to seek this, but with some recent activity, we feel confident we're moving very rapidly towards meeting the goal we sought for contributions, but still ways to go. Any other questions for Eric? Let me just ask a couple questions. I think, Councilmember Ekstrom has a good point. Sometimes the lowest bid ends up being the most expensive bid because there's probably 4 or 5 different components here. I wish we could somehow work out with them that they could get started prior to next spring, but I guess they're really overcommitted. What type of guarantee would we have, and what start date do we have with them that we could nail down?
Well, I reached out to them and they are basically ready to send a contract out to us contingent on the council's decision. So, I reached out to them last April and we thought we had them just for the surfacing because we were gonna have the concrete down, and things kept getting pushed back. And so as soon as we have a contract in place, we can get a definite date, but they have not given me a definite date.
I think that would be something that I particularly would like to know, because if this thing just gets pushed back and pushed back and pushed back, then we're really at another season. I like the fact that there's one party responsible and there's no, but if they're unwilling to give us a time frame, guarantee that time frame as part of the contract, it's a little bit concerning because this has been a project.
But well, they're willing to give a date. Just as soon as they give us the contract, we can nail them
We don't
down.
know what that date is.
We don't at this point right now, because they haven't given us a contract. So,
Councilmember Barker, can I go with Councilmember Orton and then Councilmember Exton?
Yeah, just real quick, looking at, so the bid from Courts Unlimited has spending 34,000 roughly on sidewalk. So their whole bid for pickleball courts is 200,000. I know a friend of mine that put in a pickleball court at his own house with lights, fencing, and it was 50 grand. So that's about the same cost as what we're getting for 4 if we map that out. Can I make a motion that we approve Courts Unlimited contract and then contingent upon you signing it once it comes?
As soon as I hear from Councilmember Exton, how's that? Because I promised I'd hear from
Yep.
Yes, well, along the same lines as I would like the contract to be verbally say, okay, just as, Councilmember Barker said, let's say, yeah, we're gonna sign a contract, but in the contract, we want to have a date.
I definitely agree, yes.
So does that sound good, Ryan? Is that?
Well, and if we can get one, a date is just a date unless there's something attached to it.
Right.
So those of who've experienced.
So Mayor, would you be negotiating the contract with them, or would that be Ryan, or would that be Eric?
I'd probably end up signing it. I'd be happy to help Eric and John in that regard. I think the key in my mind is we get some, just for lack of a better term, concrete date with some guarantee that this thing's not going to get delayed so that we're clear out another year.
Yeah.
I'd like to really see these things become available to utilize next summer. I do like the concept of a single, because I think Crowder, those guys would start right after grading, they probably get the cement in and
They would. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've spoken with Adam, just last week and I said, hey, give me a time frame. He says, I can be started in 3 weeks after you get, in 3 weeks, you get the grading done, I'm there.
have they built any courts before? I mean, what's the?
They have, yes. Yeah, from what he said, I have not verified it or looked into what courts he has built. But he has built courts before.
They did Pleasant Views.
Was it Pleasant View?
They did the concrete at Pleasant View Park.
Okay, I think Councilmember Barker, is there any further comments from other council members? Councilmember Delphas.
Sorry, so I just wanna speak back that this is within the budget that we have. This is within the budget that we have. That's all I wanted to confirm, right?
Yeah, in essence, the city's basically gonna get 4 pickleball courts for $60,000. Not a bad, bad deal. Anyone, any other questions? Thank you, Councilmember Delphas, Councilmember Ekstrom for your. Okay, Councilmember Barker, did you have a motion you'd like to make?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve contract with Courts Unlimited for these pickleball courts and give the signing of agreement to the mayor.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further questions on that motion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any opposed? Eric, thank you so much. You and staff, let's get this moving along. We know we've got quite a few projects going on in the city. So it never hurts to see if we can kind of entice them somehow to start earlier.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, whatever strings I can pull with them, incentives, I'll try my best.
So we'll send Councilmember Swanson over there, right?
You've got my number, call me.
Okay, all right, speaking of council member, thank you again, Eric. Very appreciative. Let's go to Councilmember Swanson, so you can talk to us about deer fencing provisions.
Council, my internal battery's doing about what my iPad is right now. It's running down quickly, so it's very short.
Okay.
In our current fencing ordinances, where 6 foot is the maximum allowed fence. What I'd like for us to discuss, and not at length tonight, but for you to think about, and then we can have another discussion with maybe some proposed ordinance revision, is that on an interior garden, that is a garden within somebody's backyard, that we would allow 8 foot deer fencing in order to help keep the deer out of the individual's garden. What I'm thinking is it would not be allowed on any peripheral fencing around the edge of the property. It would be for internal protection of the garden only. From the BWR, we've learned that about the only effective deterrent with the deer is an 8 foot fence. And this may help, or at least give some avenue of relief to our residents who are battling with the deer each year, since we've made it clear we're not going to call the deer. That I think it would be appropriate for us to consider giving some relief to residents on that internal garden fencing. Maybe a maximum size, you couldn't fence off half an acre inside your 0.6 acre yard kind of thing. But just like some general feedback on that.
Feedback for Councilmember Swanson. Councilmember Ekstrom.
Well, I agree, as I live on Deer Meadows Drive, that deer can scale a 6 foot fence. I mean, they kind of brush their bellies, but an 8 foot fence should keep them out. Most of it, they don't bother me so much, my yard, because I think my neighbors have more tasty landscaping. But yeah, it gets to be a real problem. I've heard just from friends that have gardens that they're having a real struggle between the grasshoppers and the deer getting anything out of their gardens. For us, it's the birds get our cherries, which, still trying to figure out how to keep that from happening. But I like the birds because they eat the grasshoppers. So we're always gonna have to deal with something with wildlife, but that's okay.
Okay. Thanks for your input. Councilmember Barber, did you say you had a question?
Do we, what's the right word, monitor interior fencing? Or do we
I don't-
enforce any standards on interior fencing?
I don't think we do, though it would fall under the ordinances and should there, an eager code enforcement officer or whatever, I think if we're gonna say it's okay, I think we remove any prohibition in the ordinances just so that, kind of like, remember when we removed barefoot in the parks from our ordinances, nobody paid attention to it, everybody was, but we got rid of it because it was just ridiculous. I think we have to do the same if we're going to, and make it clear to residents that we're saying, go ahead and do this.
I think I saw John shaking his head saying what we do. with residents.
So we regulate all fences. So people in front yard fences, for example, can go to a certain height, even no matter where it is, depending on where it is on their front yard line. But it sounds like the council, if you're agreeable to this, it might make a lot of sense to send it to the planning commission so they can give you some recommendations, because it's part of the land use code. And if it comes to you again for some stuff, then it still has to go to them. So it might be good for us to take it to them, and then they can give you a recommendation that you'll have in some weeks or months.
We'd like to postpone action on this.
There, need to be postponed and send it off to planning commission.
Okay, we have a motion to postpone this item on our agenda and send it to planning commission. We have a second for Councilmember Swanson's motion. Thank you, Councilmember Severin. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I'm just a little disappointed because I only put up a 6-foot fence. So now I got a problem with the deer hopping that, so.
Hopefully not.
Let's go on to our council member department reports. Councilmember Barker, do you have anything of a substantial nature you'd like to report this evening?
Yep, Wyman Park's almost finished, this rain pushed them back, is what I've been told. They can't finish up until it dries out. And then football starting, so youth recreation's going good. And then the last one was, there's a couple big service projects, so if you want to get involved, Councilmember Severin's doing one at Barker Park on September 9th, and there'll be another big one up at Old Town Park the same day, in the morning, Saturday.
Okay.
That's it, right? Did I say it? Okay.
Could I ask a question? We had, it seems like some comments on rehabbing some of the parks from the flooding. Can you give us an update on where we're at?
So yes, I spoke with Dave, and I'm of the same opinion. Our Parks Department is doing a great job of trying to fill the potholes. They're doing the best they can. Unfortunately, this is my experience, Wyman Park is still flowing water, so you can fill the hole, but they're still gonna pop back up. But our Parks Department's doing a great job.
I agree.
They're working on it.
I agree. Seems like there was a comment about Orton Park too, or something with all the flooding going on. I mean,
They said it has something.
Do you want me to speak on it?
yes, sir, speak up, come to the podium, please.
So, yeah, Mayor, you're right. Orton Park is, it almost got up to the point where it was gonna get ready to overflow again. So we went basically from Orton Park and just started working our way back up into Coldwater Canyon to try to figure out if there was something that we could do to mitigate some of those things. You know, we're trying as hard as we can to get those empty. We really want to make sure they're empty before the spring or the fall comes. We really wanted to do it before school started tomorrow, but we are just getting so much water into Orton Park from not just Coldwater Canyon. Coldwater Canyon is slowed down a little bit, and the water department is utilizing as much as of that spring as we can. But it's just still, you know, we talked to the fish farm on Monday, and they said that they've never, they haven't had this kind of water as long as they can remember. There are some dewatering that's happening from us doing the new reservoir. There's some dewatering that we're pumping water out there, to make sure that it's dry for concrete. And some of that's getting, all that works its way into Orton Park as well. So we're doing everything we can to do that. We've actually slowed down Oakland Park, the basin at Oakland. We backed that up just a little bit to see if we can slow it down. And we dropped Orton about 2 feet, in the last day and a half. So we're doing everything we can to try to slow that down. It's just, I can't believe how much water's still coming in the end of August, so.
That's great. We do appreciate the efforts of you and your department there. I guess when most of our parks are actually converted retention basins, we don't expect the fact that there's going to be water there. Just one other question. I think we also received some comments about the hollow portion of Oakland Park.
Yes.
And getting that back up to speed. Do we have a plan on that? Do you know?
Yeah, so we took both teams, the stormwater and the parks, and went over and seeing what we can do to get that cleaned up. There was a hole in the fence that I know that they're getting somebody out to repair that right away. And then just some of the dead foliage that we're gonna put together a project kind of in line with some of these other fall cleanup projects that we're doing, to make sure we get those done too.
Okay. We appreciate that. And I understand there's someone that's had painting experience that's volunteered to help with the picnic tables we still
He really likes that.
Might want to keep that in mind.
Yeah, I already know.
Okay. All right, appreciate all you do.
Thank you.
You've got a job there, so thank you. Councilmember Ekstrom, since we have Dave here too. You want-
Yeah, I was just wondering if Dave wanted to just continue on and give the.
I can.
Yeah, come up. You're much better at describing what's actually happening than I am because you have, more knowledge and background skill and experience. I get excited about it. I can woo, this is awesome.
So the stuff I passed on to Councilman Ekstrom was the reservoir. So we're down to the depth that we need it to be, the size, it's opened all up, and we've hauled off a ton of dirt. Everybody that lives on Market Park Lane knows how much stuff they haul off. But so we're down to that depth, and they're getting ready in the next 2 weeks to start pouring concrete. They'll start pouring the floor here pretty quick, and they brought in the rock and everything that they need to. And so we're getting ready to pour the floor for that. One of the other things I was letting her know is the bathroom got delivered for the trailhead. And so that's in place. It's actually completely hooked. Oh, Eric's gone out. It's completely hooked up and ready to go. So it can actually be used as a bathroom right now and for anybody that's on the trailhead. So, and then the asphalt for that, asphalt and the curb and gutter and for the parking lot should be, they're starting on the first week in September. So that's here in a week as well. So we're moving right along on that. And what else did I pass on? Water. The water is going better than expected, right? It's been crazy how great the springs have been running, to the point where we haven't turned on a well for multiple months actually. And so the energy savings that we're seeing there is just amazing. So yeah, all the springs are running at almost better than they've ran in a long time. It's late August. Usually this is when they start tapering off, and they haven't even moved. So it's a good thing.
Need any help?
No, I think we're in great shape. So
Got the resources you need?
yes, sir. Absolutely.
Well, tell your crews, thank you very much. And thank you for all you do.
Thanks, Mark.
Councilmember Severing, do you have anything you'd like to report to us about the police?
I sure do. Chief Quinney notified me that public safety building is moving along. And it looks like we'll have a January 2024 completion date. School starts tomorrow. Please remember to watch for pedestrians, especially the children at the crossings. And there will be officers for extra presence at the schools tomorrow. And then last but not least, the police department has a program that's called Keep Them Safe. If you have a child or adult with special needs that you're concerned about wandering away from home, give the police department a call to learn about the program. So that's all I have.
And if I could just add my appreciation to John and several other staff members along with the police department and code enforcement. We had a meeting the other night that you'll recall, it was a group that came and had some concerns with the city, and we spent some time with them. They had some suggestions on things that might help, but we'll be following up with that. But I just want to commend those who attended. I think the meeting started at 6 o'clock, and so it was a good time. They did a nice job, I think, listening to the citizens, and I think citizens left with some additional understanding of some things aren't as simple as they seem on the surface. So thanks to those who participated in that. All right. We'll now return to public comments. Those who would like to make further comments, and then counsel some of the responses, maybe to earlier comments and questions. Is there anyone that would like to make further comment?
Chris Pulver, North Ogden, just to follow up on the pickleball, I guess I'm assuming, I just texted Nathan, he has responded, that that group is being part of the that bid process, but just coordination with them to understand, because they had a lot of knowledge when it came to what needs to be done on pickleball. Just making sure that was.
I believe John has been staying in contact with the group, particularly, I guess, with fundraising.
Yeah, okay, that was it.
Thank you.
Yep.
John, is there anyone online? Comments?
Yes, we have Jeanette Sweet.
Okay. Jeanette, go ahead, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hold on a sec. We're gonna get our speaker going here.
Okay, try now, Jeanette.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay, so this is Jeanette Sweet, and I live in North Ogden. Perfect segue, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for the meeting last night. I was a member of the group that came and met with several of the city officials. It was a great exchange, and on behalf of all of us, I'd like to say thank you for making that time available. And it was a terrific exchange with the residents of North Ogden, North Lakeview Drive neighborhood in North Ogden. We really appreciated that time. Moving on from that, I would like to share some insights for consideration regarding the right-of-way discussion about the dumpsters, trucks, trailers on the street. I live on Upper North Lakeview Drive, directly across from a cul-de-sac at 3600 North. A couple months ago, I watched a side dump truck, one of the extremely long bed dump trucks, take a wrong turn, entered the cul-de-sac. Once he got up to the top of the circle, it was obvious that he was in trouble. And so he was too long to make the circular turn to exit the cul-de-sac. Residents wound up moving personal vehicles that had been parked on the road to provide room for him. One of the residents marshaled the truck as he backed up onto the private driveway, just inches away from the house itself. He had to then jockey back and forth in order to finally get out of that cul-de-sac. And that whole process took over an hour. So then in mid-July, we had a dumpster placed in front of a home on the street on the north exit side of the circle in that same cul-de-sac. The next day, I watched a Republic garbage truck turn into that cul-de-sac. He was then blocked by the dumpster from making the swing to exit the cul-de-sac, let alone that being able to empty any of the garbage cans that were right near the dumpster. So again, he wound up backing up onto the resident's driveway to make the turn and leave the cul-de-sac. He actually ran over part of the resident's garden, knocked over his garbage cans, and sat parked there while I'm assuming he made phone calls to the corporate office to decide what he should do next. But then eventually he was able to jockey his way around to getting out of the cul-de-sac. So I'm just sharing this so that you'll please be conscious of cul-de-sac issues when you move forward with the right-of-way considerations for parking the trucks and the dumpsters on the street.
Thank you. I think that's good feedback. Once again, as we refine this in to deal with the real problems, I think our staff will come up with some good suggestions. So thank you for your input. Is there anyone else online, John?
No.
Okay. Is there anyone here that would like to further comment? If not, council, let's try to address some of the questions or issues that came up in our initial public comments portion of our agenda. Would anyone like to respond? Some of those, Councilmember Swanson.
Thank you, Mayor. Regarding the canal trail being paved, we've talked about that for years and years and years, and there are a couple of barriers to that, one being financial. It's pretty expensive to pay that. The other is that we don't own that canal. We don't own the surface, and we have to get permission from the water company, and then there's liability issues and maintenance and all that kind of good stuff. And so there's been I think one short section just west of 1050, right, John, along McGriff Park there, that was paved, and along there behind your home, actually there, John, just a short section. But it'd be great if we, what did it cost us, John, to pave that little section right there east of 1050? Do you remember?
It's been done so long ago that I don't
Yeah,
don't know.
it's hundreds of thousands of dollars to pave that thing along there, and it's just, again, we would have to get the permission from the water companies and sign liability waivers and all kinds of crazy stuff that would be preventative. The unlicensed solicitors in the city has probably been an issue since the ordinance was first put in place decades ago. The best thing that can be done is that when you have an unlicensed solicitor come to your door, you can ask them kindly to leave, or you can call the non-emergency police line and report it, understanding that, the police are going to treat it in the priority that it really is. And I think that's why the solicitors continue in every city to come unsolicited, because there's really no way to enforce it. And then on the panhandlers, the biggest issue we run into there, obviously, if they're violating the daytime noise ordinances, a call to the non-emergency line should be made so that that can be handled. But courts across the country have made it very clear that panhandlers have First Amendment rights. And there have been case after case after case after case across the country. And every city, most recently several in Colorado in the last couple of years, that have tried to prohibit panhandling, have lost in court, spent a lot of money fighting those court battles. Those individuals have their First Amendment rights, and so there isn't a lot that we can do. I know in one community in Colorado, they did pass an ordinance where an individual who is soliciting donations cannot approach an individual and ask. They can stand, hold a sign, make it very obvious that they would like a donation. And if you approach them, you're welcome to donate. But they can't actively, and even that's been challenged, and I don't know what the outcome of that has been, but it's an unfortunate part of the world that we live in, that we have those individuals among us, and we do what we can to help them and get them the resources that they need.
Councilmember Swanson, could I add to that? I believe private property, that if the property owner prohibits it,
that's correct.
That can take place, but on public property,
that's correct.
I think there's only slight limitations that you can impair traffic and things of that nature, but otherwise, your report is.
Yeah, you've seen in Salt Lake City where they've prohibited it, like at some of the freeway underpasses and stuff, you can't approach a vehicle that's in traffic. They've prohibited that, but the actual individual playing their music or whatever it happens to be, they've got constitutional rights that protect it.
Thank you for those comments.
and it just reminded me that there's so many ordinances, and our ability to enforce those ordinances with the resources we have sometimes is fairly limited. So we do rely on citizens to make us aware of violations, and then we try our best. I know that one of the understandings I've gained in this process is the fact that it takes time. There's a process that our code enforcement has to go through. It seems like 90 days or something, at least. It's a long period of time. So what's happening is our code enforcement is working on some of these issues. But citizens are maybe unaware that it takes that period of time, but I know the chief has stepped that up and trying to do the best we can, but I always look at an ordinance when we pass one, is it enforceable? Are we able to enforce it? Because if not, it's just putting additional ink on the paper, right? Well, if I could respond to Mr. Hall's comments, having been a resident of that area. I do think it probably makes sense to treat it similar to any other park. That, our parks have to be out, people have to be out by 10 o'clock, I believe. There's noise ordinances, there's light ordinances. Correct me if I'm wrong, John, but it's pretty much our policy for non-smoking.
Yes, smoking is prohibited in parks.
So we have some signs up and we have other signs. Other parks we don't, but I think that this probably ought to have the same restrictions on it as any other park out there. In regards to parking, there is that temporary turnaround at the end of 1550, I believe. That was probably dedicated to the city, I'd imagine, John.
Well, it's on city property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the city can post parking and no parking there.
Yeah, technically for the fire code standards, the 55-foot radius should be left open. And so any vehicles inside of that 55-foot radius would need to be moved, or trailers or anything like that.
So we probably should put some no parking signs there at the end of the street. It's always been a fear, I think, of residents in that area of potential fire danger. I know that the weeds have been cut down, but I find it interesting, people were out taking pictures of the helicopter that was up there with the trucks parking their hot thing. So I think that the risk is probably not being increased with fire. As long as we treat it like any other park. I don't have the answers to a lot of the questions in regards to the gentleman who's trying to put that together, his understanding. I know there's kind of upsides and downsides to both that, having a written agreement, not having a written agreement there. But John, we kind of defer to you on that, being our city attorney.
And I did reach out to him yesterday and just clarified that exactly what they're doing. And I mentioned some of the comments he's made on that UDisc golf page, and he is updating those, or told me he would. And I made it very clear it's the city park, it's not a club area, and so I made that clear.
Yeah, it'd probably be good for him to clarify any type of advertisement or posting online that's approved by the city, since it is city property. I know, having lived there, I've seen everything from people practicing archery to four-wheelers to, so I do understand the concern there, but I think that ground is set there for a long time, and probably see some use of it. And I understand, John, that there is no permanent construction facilities.
Correct.
That there's not heavy equipment going to be moving in there and moving things around, that it's supposed to be using its natural escape, is that correct?
Yeah, we did bring in a skid steer to help level the tee boxes and the goals or the holes because for ADA requirements.
Right. So, hopefully there won't be a lot of carts up in that area, but just like other parks, I think they could probably have their vehicles. Do they have, don't we prohibit motorized vehicles in our parks?
So what we would do is, and this would be a rule that we could make it clear on the sign, is that they basically need to have the disabled placard on their vehicle in order to operate those type of things in a city park.
Which is common with any park. Mr. Hall, does that answer
Yes, sir.
your questions?
Yes.
So thank you for coming and sharing that with us. I think this will actually end up being a good thing.
I do too.
For the city, so. Council, any other comments? Councilmember Ekstrom?
Okay, so I don't think, Dave, you were in here when Mr. Ashdown was asking if we could help with some clearing of some really stickery weeds along the Pleasant View Drive walking path. Those nasty stickers are really bad. So if we can have, or your guys go over there, that would be really helpful, right? That would be really nice. She would not, do not get in her house. The other one I would, let's see, Brian, you weren't here when Rob Strand was talking about the Coldwater Canyon Trail. Maybe we can get that marked better or something. I don't know what's happening. And my brother-in-law, went up there and got lost and got really chewed out, ended up, getting a ride down from Lewis Barker. But anyway, if we could somehow get it so that the public part of it is really delineated and well marked so that people can get up and down it, and the not tall, maybe can take that on as a project.
I think Mr. Call, I've had discussion with him about this. And I think Rob has a point. I don't think you can cut off access to public property that has been historically used as a trail. And I think that has been used. The question is that a city issue or is that a private citizen issue? Because I agree that is a jewel. And if Mr. Barker can't legally do that, he ought to be informed of that. Then I guess private citizens or counsel us on that, John.
So it's a rule called the public use doctrine. And basically any trail that's used, they call them roads, but trails by the public for 10 consecutive years creates a public trail. And the issue is it's not officially legally established until the court rules on it. And that always ends up either being, unless the parties can agree, but it is in the county. So we've always kind of said, well, it might just be a county problem, but we also do have the option. Anybody can bring it up. The city could bring it up if they wanted. We could try negotiating with Mr. Barker and Mr. Dunkley, who live in the area, and to talk about that. But I think most of these cases that I've seen heavily litigated in Utah, they do drag out. And usually it comes down to witnesses and people who get up and say, when I was a kid, I hiked it every day or every week. A good example of this is there's a large private institution in the Provo area that blocks all their private streets off once a day every year, or once for a full day every year, so that doctrine of public use doesn't trigger their private roads across their campus to become public roads. So in this case, it's likely that someone who went down that path would succeed in getting it opened as a public trail, just based on the history I know of the area.
It would seem the best thing to do is to try and negotiate reasonableness. But sometimes that's difficult to negotiate. I've actually had, and I think, don't we own part of the road, John, that goes up there?
We own until it gets to the property, the Weaver Basin Conservancy District, where the pond is, where they're So we own to that point. And then we have a utility access easement to get up to our springs and our spring boxes. So we then cross onto private property for our purposes, for utility purposes.
So can Mr. Barker close off our road up to that point? Because it seems like it's closed off.
No, the gate could not be installed anywhere on city property without our permission.
Is it on city property? Have you taken a
There
look at
there is one on the western edge over by the temporary turnaround that is on the city property. And with this disc golf area, our plan is to relocate that gate to the property line, at least of the Barker's property.
Anything else that we'd like to address? Councilmember Summer?
John, I had a family reach out to me in preparation for school beginning this week. And I won't disclose the name, but they live on 425. And they're concerned because over this last year, as the high school students are leaving, they're trying to avoid the stop sign, the stop light at 3100 and 450. So they come burning down 425 to take that little elbow to get to 450. And they indicated that they come down that street rather quickly.
Okay.
So if you could pass that on to Chief Quinn, that maybe here at the beginning of the year, school year, we could have some pretty good enforcement going on there.
Help, you want us to help the insurance agency increase their rates? I'm just kidding. But no, we will pass that on to the chief.
We just want people to be safe. So, thank you, that's all.
All right, thank you. Anything else? All right, with that, then I would seek a motion to adjourn.